So as also as a formal introduction, Frederik, first of all, thanks for all what you do in the Cardano Foundation. I was thrilled with the events last week. I'm also a founder of the Latam Cardano community, and together with Alex, we have a radio show where it's a technological show mainly aimed for Argentina, but I do the Cardano column there, and that's why we are here together with this interview. So I have a kind of a lot of mindsets and interest here in this interview, but we will try to focus on the audience and how to communicate better the Cardano opportunity and vision.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all your work in Buenos Aires and the summit. Huh? I saw some amazing pictures. Seems like you had a really good day there.
Well, I was unfortunately not part of the bunch this time, but Ale was there, and I hear the same thing as you. So it was amazing. Also, the Mexico event, the Brazilian event, it was Cardano was all over the place. So we are very happy that that's starting to happen. So, would you like to start?
Sure. Yeah. Looking forward to it.
Okay. So there was a very interesting last weeks, I would say, for the Cardano community. Two major events, and I will say many more than two. One was the IO Scott Fest, where there was major announcements by IOG, and then we have the Cardano Summit that not only happened as a main event in Lausanne, Switzerland, but all around the world. So, Frederik, what was your take on the summit and all the incredible announcements that were made from the Cardano Foundation? What is your results and conclusions about all these announcements and activities?
Yeah, for me it was an amazing moment. So this was the first time that the Cardano Foundation took not just the lead but all the orchestration over and actually arranged the Cardano Summit. So we did 51 locations around the world, sort of within plus minus 2 days, and the numbers are coming in, but we had close to 20,000 registrations. We're a little bit unsure if actually was a little bit less or a little bit more, depending on your sort of the last numbers. And what I really saw was a community who stands together as a beacon of light in a very dark time. So I was extremely impressed about this situation, that in a bear market, over 1,200 people find their way all the way to Switzerland from around the world to talk to each other, to build with each other, to enter collaborations, and to really talk about the next evolution of Cardano, which really is the age of Voltaire. So that was just simply mind-blowing. The other thing was very clear to me was that even though the Cardano Foundation and IOG, we had quite a few announcements, there was even way more announcements from the community. A lot of projects we never heard about, who was on stage, talking about fantastic use cases, talking about how to solve real world problems, to super creative NFT offerings, new games on Cardano, people who's really launching on the architecture. So it's really nice to see that, there was a bit of information asymmetry in the community, like 1.5, 2 years ago. So the federated entities, so IOG, Murko, and us, we probably knew more or less all projects. And now we get equally surprised when we open up our emails. But when we then come to to Lausanne or to one of the other locations, and we meet all the builders and all the believers, it's just super exciting.
Thanks for that, and I agree that the community is growing quite crazy, I would say, and I really appreciate that you have the space for the community to express. And now that the Voltaire era is being announced, and the community will take a more active role on the decisions and the future of Cardano, how do you see the entities going forward when Voltaire is up and running and the community is taking over the governance of the blockchain? How do you see the Cardano Foundation, especially, and the rest of the entities, the founding entities, role on the Cardano ecosystem?
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot to uncover in that question. So let me just start in your last bit of the question, the founding entities. So I think what's really important to understand is that the Cardano Foundation was not the founding entity, and the Cardano Foundation doesn't own or nor control the Cardano blockchain. This is a very big difference compared to many other blockchain foundations who actually issues the token, do the fundraising, own the monetary policy, maybe have some magical keys who can do large changes, even though the community might think differently. None of that is true with the Cardano Foundation, and the Cardano Foundation doesn't control the treasury either. Now, the Cardano Foundation is a conclusion of really hard work done by a certain set of founders who went out there with a vision and a whiteboard to really change the world. And two founding entities, basically, or maybe three founding entities came out of that. And then the fourth entity is actually what now is known as the Cardano Foundation. And the difference of those entities is that it was very important for the original founders to have an entity which had a very strong vision about the future, and also about keeping some checks and balances, and who couldn't just divert based on a short-term iteration. Therefore, the Cardano Foundation is founded in Switzerland. It is a non-profit foundation. It is governed by a regulatory body who basically ensures that if we divert from what the original founders proclaimed, we actually have personal liability. So it's a very strong checks and balances and regulated setup. So I think that's sort of the first thing which is important. The other thing which is important is that the Cardano Foundation has for the last 9 months, or maybe a little bit more, been very focused around what we call economic sustainability. And what we mean about economic sustainability is that it must be the purpose of the system that the users of the system have a way to contribute to the features and the product to market fit of the infrastructure. And today, even though we say many blockchains are open source, what they really mean is that it's public source. And the difference between open source and public source is that there is this notion in the blockchain community that transparency and accountability is brought through that you can read the smart contracts or you can read the code. And that means that all of the Cardano's code, or nearly all of the Cardano code, is in open source GitHub repositories and is under what's called Apache version 2 licenses. Now, that doesn't mean that if you create a really nice company in Chile and you start to rely on that, and a lot of employees and their employees have families, that you actually can rely on, that you can actually ensure that the products you're selling or the problem you're solving can be supported on the future versions of the Cardano infrastructure. So therefore, what we thought is that it's really, really important to take the best we see from open source software, which is this decentralized innovation mechanism that everybody can contribute, they can build, they can test, they can even send resources to another entity to ensure this process is going, but there's a very formalized way of getting into the technical roadmap. And we wanted to merge that with the best of the blockchain. And the best of the blockchain is really this decentralized operation, this new security architecture, including that you have an option for direct funding. Many of the blockchains have an option of direct funding, and in Cardano is called Catalyst. And those two, if you can merge those two models, what you really get is the best of open source architecture and community, which we've seen evolve from the 80s, plus the best of blockchain. And in the age of Voltaire, as Charles announced at Scotfest, what you see is that the MBO, or the membership-based organization, has a big, open source aspiration. And that was not the case originally, to really think about open source as being this economic, sustainable incentive models, including this structured process. So I think we're very proud about that in the Cardano Foundation, that we've been, part of pushing that journey, but also exploring that journey with community members and external organizations from the open source community. The second part of Voltaire is really about on-chain governance. And as you probably have heard, that's coming a few SIPs out and so on. And I like to think about it as the rules of the game. So how do we ensure that Cardano doesn't get diverted to be, weaponized, or, going in a direction in which, the early citizens of Cardano does not like? So there has to be a set of rules which enables change, but it, doesn't enable, a complete change in the purpose of Cardano. And I think here it's really important that the community members participate in the SIPs process, which is, outlined by the Cardano Foundation and the SIP editors on this SIP, which is being proposed from IOG on how this constitution should be. And I think this is potentially one of the places where you really can define the community involvement and the guardrails and boundary conditions of this handover process to the future. And I think this is really complicated. I mean, anybody who's been spending time with the old Greeks and democracy and thinking about different government forms will realize that we have a huge potential here, but it's very complicated. And the third thing is really about, this, we call it liquid democracy. So the ability to enable institutions and delegated representatives to actually be fully employed on Cardano by, taking care in the governance process of being, nearly like a small institution of knowledge where they go down into the rabbit hole of a specific thing. Maybe it's a protocol parameter, maybe it's an incentive, maybe it's how Mithril is working, and allows the local community to feel good about that somebody represents them in something who's extremely complicated. And that's actually that's again a new opportunity for job creation and economic incentive for people wherever they are in the world, as long as they're able to read and they're able to, understand some of these things and be specialized in that. That allows nearly like a new class of citizens. And I think when you ask me the question about, what's going to happen with the original federated, entities, what I really think is going to happen is, at least on the short term, right, is I truly hope that IOG keeps being the subject matter experts on a lot of the stack they've built, because they've made fantastic architectural choices along the way. And they're really running this academic research, in such a positive way, which we haven't seen many other blockchain projects doing. So I'm hoping that, in a certain way, IoT becomes not just an institution of knowledge and maybe even a DREP or something along those lines, but they also keep contributing to the infrastructure stack and to the research and so forth. But I would, very much also enjoy other companies like an IoT suddenly come into our ecosystem and contribute on some of those things. On the Imurgo side, we've seen now at the summit that they've been very vocal about the stablecoin USDA, which I think is a fantastic opportunity. So now not only do we have JET, but we have this USDA project coming out where the foundation is also going to contribute to that, mainly on regulatory guidance, infrastructure, integration, architecture, and some other points. But we have now 2 larger stablecoins projects on the way, plus some community-led ones, which I think is amazing. And then they are going to focus a lot on venture capital and infrastructure in Africa. And I think, that's three things we really need. And it's really nice to see how Imurgo is now, committing and picking a path there. And with the Cardano Foundation, I like to think about it like this. If it's economically uninteresting for other people to do it, and it has high liability, well, probably it would be pretty good that the foundation starts doing it, but we should never end doing it. And what I mean about that is, if there is somebody in the community who can get, the same quality out there as we delivers, and is willing to spend the money and take the legal liability, we should not be too. I mean, that's just, we should just give it away, or at least ensure that there's 2 entities doing it. So I don't think that it's realistic that the Cardano Foundation cease to exist tomorrow. I think what's probably going to happen is that we are going to be turned into one of these institutions, one of these knowledge sources, who's going to help on certain aspects. And then I think you can ask, so what are we doing now? What battles have we chosen now? And if we want, we can dig a little bit into that.
Let's do it. What are your battles that you are fighting now?
Yeah, so the first battle we are fighting is the economic sustainability. As you see now with the membership-based organization, it's about open source, it's about a structured way that projects really can rely on the future releases and the future features of Cardano, but also that if we see a situation that the treasury over time, starts, running dry, that we have other incentive models and other ways to ensure that Cardano, the protocol, keeps being incentivized in the right way and keep having access to cash. So that's what we call the future sustainability of the technical roadmap and the ecosystem, or short open source, right? The second part is we've now seen thousands of companies building on Cardano, which is such an amazing experience. But if you count how many people who actually takes care of the disaster recovery, who takes care of, network monitoring, network health, guarding, what comes from the code stack into the actual mainnet, right? You have to think about it like when we exponentially onboard more and more people who rely on the blockchain, and we only have very, very few people and only one entity who actually takes care of that, that's a bit of a problem. So we're building up we call it blockchain monitoring and reliability. So basically what we're building up is a set of site reliability engineers who works with the stake pool operators, but also works with IoD around creating a more secure network stack and more secure mainnet. So because we are not like other blockchains who just can roll it back with the switch of a second, we are actually decentralized, right? So we need more entities and more people who takes care of that lower level. And honestly speaking, it's not something you can earn money on, and it's something, if it goes wrong, everybody will be looking at you and pointing the finger, right? So it's not a very attractive to be down there, to be honest. And if somebody want to join us in this journey, they're more than welcome. We already know that a lot of stake pool operators is already joining us on this journey, but outside them, it's a bit hard to see how you can earn money on this in the current maturity. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I do agree that sustainability is a key thing, as you mentioned. I like to thank you for bringing that topic in, and also mention Project Catalyst within the kind of the same paragraph. And for the community, especially in Latin America, one of the things that we see as a unique for Cardano, and that's why there is a lot of interest and traction from the local communities, is about this unique possibility to get funded on your dreams and ideas. And maybe you already know or not, but Latin America has 30% poverty index, and but at the same time we have a lot of talent and a lot of readiness for the crypto space. Many of the top Latin American countries are on the top 10 for cryptocurrency adoption, and we are seeing a lot of movement and interest from other blockchains in Latin America. For example, in Buenos Aires, we have the ETH Latam, the Polkadot worldwide event where Gavin was here, Vitaly was here. Last, we have the LabitConf in Buenos Aires as well, with 6,000 people attending. In Brazil, same thing happened. So, and we are not seeing the same traction on the Cardano side, and maybe some explanation is, okay, Africa needed more, but Project Catalyst, I think, and this is my personal opinion, could be that leverage for making this effort in parallel, for you can bet things on Africa, which makes sense, and it's the largest growth in population in the world, but then you have a full region with extreme poverty, but there's ready to adopt the blockchain, especially the Cardano opportunity. And Project Catalyst is kind of one of the tools that can make that happen, because it's a decentralized investment fund for innovation, and many people from LATAM can participate and get funded in a decentralized ways without any focus for any of the organizations. But recently, Project Catalyst has a lot of heat, let's say, with many critics, and it's okay to have critics because it's an experiment, and that's fine. That we need to evolve and make things right and learn from the mistakes. But at the same time, it kind of created a gap between what was the dynamic being built in terms of communities and innovation and things outside of the infrastructure or basic infrastructure building in Cardano. What is your opinion on Project Catalyst? What do you think will happen to it in terms of evolution? What do we need to support in terms of having this real decentralized fund that can foster innovation in many different ways in parallel and not only in the infrastructure side.
Yes, I would love to answer that question. Just to round off what I started on before. So there's 4 things the foundation is looking at right now. So the first one is this economic sustainability. The second one is this blockchain operations. The third one is PR and marketing. And the fourth is basically activation or growth. And what I would like to make extremely clear is that Catalyst is a product by IOG for the community. It was meant as a kind of, the learning rails or the guardrails or whatever you call it, like to ensure that we go in this decentralized way. And the Cardano Foundation has not been involved in the architecture or the governance of Catalyst. As you know, we have one representative sitting in there, and for 2 or 3 rounds, we actually delegated that to some ambassadors because we felt that they were closer to that than we are. Now, we do vote in Catalyst, as you probably noticed, and there's been some questions about, how we vote and what we vote, and some of those questions is actually related to the fact that Catalyst is not that transparent that we would like it to be, and I think you've seen that also, that it's quite hard to actually to get the data out of it. It always comes out of a centralized entity and not of a blockchain-based entity. Now, I think what's really interesting and what I really like about Catalyst is the involvement. Is this that, if you have a project and you don't have any engineers, you can go into idea scale, you can formulate the problem you're trying to solve, and you can come with a solution and ask for funding, but you're getting much more than funding. What you're getting is like advisory or consulting by a very scarce resource, which is blockchain enthusiast, who's also been doing something similar around the world. So you kind of have access to a decentralized top consulting company in idea scale. And I agree, I've observed this a bit, and sometimes it's a bit negatively. A lot of people is very negative in there, but we've seen many times that people have, diverted from the original solution suggestion to another solution suggestion based on this articulation. The other part is we've seen teams has been forming in there, where, a solution designer or a business person has a really good solution idea, and then several engineers came and said, we want to be a part of that journey. So I think that's really, really positive. So in a way, this is it's much more than a funding vehicle. It's actually also a knowledge think tank, and it's a way to collect builders in the community. And I think I have not seen something similar in the blockchain realm. I've seen a lot of Discord channels and so on, but not really putting it together like that. So I think this has been an extreme success. When we look at the size of the funding and when we look at some of it, I'm a little bit worried about the democracy in Catalyst. It feels to me that, if you're sort of making if you're a well-known YouTube host or if you're a well-known developer in the community, the likelihood that you'll get funding is way better than if you are unknown. And I don't have a solution to that today. It's not something we've been looking into, but I think there need to be different solution suggestions around how you vote and with what kind of power you vote. And I think this is really interesting to see now in the age of Voltaire, where we speak about liquid democracy and quadratic voting. So I'm really hoping that some of the Voltaire comes into Catalyst and will allow a better way. Specifically, what I would like to see was, for instance, a Latin American Catalyst, to be very honest with you. So, I could imagine that, nearly like a fork of Catalyst in Latin America with a focus on solving problems, which is local to Latin America. We still have access to the decentralized treasury, sort of in the same scale as we see in Catalyst today. So in my world, there must be opportunities in terms of either a demographic variance of Catalyst or an industry vertical that, for instance, within pharma, healthcare, or within agriculture, there's either a subset of Catalyst or even like a complete different Catalyst who can go in and specialize that. Because I think it's very hard for a person sitting in Europe to have a view on a problem who needs to be solved in Chile, and opposite. And I think this is unfortunately what we see with other blockchains, is that very few people, so less than 5-6 people, take decisions on where funding goes around the world based on what they like. And then I must say, then I like Catalyst better. I like better that you actually have a community which you can engage and onboard to Catalyst. So there is different, let's say, variances, and I would like to see some involvement of Catalyst, and hopefully we will see that as Voltaire is rolling out. So yeah, does that answer your question a little bit?
Sure. And let me tell you, we share the same idea that you just expressed. Let's work for a Latin American catalyst and an African catalyst and an art catalyst, because I think that's something that we can experiment as a community, making things in parallel, because that's what we need. Real usage for the blockchain is what we will drive the blockchain as a success in the future. And now that you are talking and we are talking about Latin America, I would like to understand your position or your opinion from the Cardano Foundation towards Latin America. What do you think Latin America as a place where Cardano Foundation can really make an impact, and how the Latin American community can help the community, the Cardano Foundation, to create that impact?
So the two other entities, specifically Morco and IOG, I think they're going to end up being sort of more commercial entities. So IOG's contract with the original founding entity was around building the first version of Cardano, including the research, the academic approach, and the engineering, right, all the way through Voltaire. And I think, they've really been shipping a lot of high quality code, and it's amazing. But my guess would be that they're on a, let's say, more of a commercialization journey with Lace Wallet and a Teleprism and many other things. Imurco has always been quite open, and there was supposed to be the marketing and commercialization and educational, part of Cardano. So that basically means that when I'm looking at where the Cardano Foundation is focusing, right, we've never focused on being a commercially driven entity in one specific area. We've been focusing on the longevity of the Cardano protocol, including the promotion of it. So not the marketing, but the promotion, meaning also that from a regulatory perspective, you're able to do it, that you don't go to prison because you use ADA for a smart contract, right? That you have clarity around the system as such. So the Cardano Foundation has never, or at least not while I've been here, could be before, well, let me say, be very clear, while I've been here, we never had a geographical focus. And I'm really hoping that we can stay without a geographical focus, because it should be other entities who is focusing on this value capture layer more than the Cardano Foundation, because otherwise we become a little bit of a competition to community-led projects and so on. When that's being said, one of the things which is really sad to me is the language barrier. I think that we have way too much English, and we have way too poor English, not the actual language, but the documentation, specifically the education about how you build on Cardano, is just not good enough. So what we launched at the Cardano Summit is actually an educational initiative in English, but everything is written down. And imagine like a Google Doc where everything is written down, from zero blockchain knowledge to Plutus and Haskell knowledge. And what I'm hoping will happen is that people speaking Spanish, Chinese, Portuguese is going to take this content, translate that, put it into YouTube channels, maybe make an application of it, like an educational local application app, use that in fintech incubator and so forth. So we become much stronger in the language. And then from our side here after the summit, we're working on a full review and revamp of the Cardano Foundation website, including also the developer portal. And our hope and dream is really to make it much more channel agnostic. So we've been playing around with some tools where we can ensure that we can cover much more languages, because Cardano is not an English thing, and it should not be an English thing. It should be for the world. But we need to respect and just acknowledge that if the documentation is not even there in English, and the documentation in English is quite poor, I mean, that's a bad point of departure. So if there is, let's say, interesting projects, if there is people who want to be ambassadors or stake pool operators who operate down in South America or LATAM, I think this is the first ones we want to get closer to and see if we can work with, so we can start listening to some structured feedback from them, because the stake pool operators are the one running the actual nodes of the future, which fits with the Cardano strategy. And the ambassadors, we are hoping to give much more tools so to enable people to build on it. And then we will be a bit more engaged in Voltaire. than we were planning to do. We already started now with the MBO and so forth. But yeah, that's the journey, huh?
Let me tell you, we are up to the task. We are glad to help in Spanish and Portuguese to translate that content. We have several people in different roles, and especially aim for translation. As you said, translation is one of the barriers for adoption, and we are here to lower that barrier. So I would like to thank for your time, Fred. It was a great conversation. Thanks for dedicating some time for the Latinian community, and especially this radio show, for us to hear more on your take on things. And if you have any last message that you would like to tell the people in Latin America.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think Latin America has some of the largest changes or chances for breaking free of the social systems and really solving local problems on Cardano. And we have a fairly large integration team who can help with some of that journey if you like specific things. We have the developer portal now. We now will come up with educational projects and so on. So I would love to see much more projects in Latin America. And, you know, I think, you know, it's amazing what's been happening down there in terms of blockchain adoption and so on. So I'm really curious to follow how that goes. And it's a puzzle for me, to be honest, to see the adoption in Europe and North America, when, you know, Cardano fits much better to Latin America, to Africa and Southeast Asia in many ways, because, you know, the problems we can solve on chain relates much closer to the problems which is on the ground there compared to more high income countries. So very, very happy to be on your show today. And if you want, I'll be very happy to join on your show again in a couple of months if you feel it adds value, and we can do a larger Q&A and so forth as well. We're here to serve you guys.
You are more than invited to have these and all the talks as you please, and also invited to the LATAM Town Hall and to come here. Why not in person? Maybe we can create some sort of event for you to come and visit in person Latin America.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And I don't know, I mean, unfortunately, I don't speak Portuguese or Spanish, but if you feel it can add value to join the LATAM Town Hall, let's get it done. Let's get it in the diary, and I'll be very happy to come and speak to your community. So I'm very happy to do so.
Awesome. We can translate. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Fred. Thanks for your time again. Thanks, Shane, for being here, and Ale for being here in there and managing the controls.
Thank you very much, everybody, and keep building on Cardano.